from academia to becoming a shop directioner. This unicorn here isn't quite so good for our publicity, but this one's a bit more cuter, and this one's available on our website as well. So for sale for $29.99 actually. So afterwards, if you're after a cute unicorn, here's the link. So the first half I'll focus on from academia to joining Shop Direct, and the second half I'll focus on a short RStudio tutorial. So a bit about my background. I was previously an electronic engineer designing chips, Internet of Things chips and 4G mobile chips with NXP and Qualcomm, and then moved on to more researchy kind of stuff as a research scientist with a Defence Science and Technology Laboratory. And then that got me very interested in research, so I did a PhD at Southampton University, where my dissertation was on mobile image parsing, and I looked at 3 applications for that, all quite related to retail and clothing, and they are visual clothing search, so mobile visual clothing search on mobile phone, mobile augmented reality mirror, and person identification. And then since then, I've joined Shop Direct as a data scientist, working on computer vision, deep learning, and augmented reality type problems. And you can follow me on Twitter afterwards if you like. So just to give you an idea about some of my previous work during the PhD. So I worked on augmented reality. I didn't have enough money for a Vive or something like this at the time, so I was using a Google Cardboard. And working on integrating clothing cues with soft biometrics, such as the way we walk and our height and length of our limbs and these kind of biometrics, and fusing them together to create a robust identification system. And one of the other applications I worked on was mobile visual clothing search, where you could snap a picture of someone wearing some clothing you like, and then it'd come back to you with some results where you can buy that online, or also sending your GPS so you can find the closest shops which have that similar item in stock. And now I'm at Shop Direct, creating our first in-house machine learning platform based on our open source tech stack. So we're using Python, R, you'll be pleased to know, and also Spark in order to scale that up. And so what application am I working on for all this theoretical stuff? Well, you're probably familiar with this infamous dress. Is it white and gold, or is it blue? Who thinks it's white and gold? Who thinks it's blue? One person. So yeah, I brought this up because I'm working on classifying clothing and also predicting semantic text attributes for clothing in order to make an impact on things such as search and also visual similarity for recommendations, and enabling applications such as mobile visual search. The company's undergoing a massive digital transformation at the moment. So it's the team's in quite a startup-esque kind of environment. It's very agile, as Simon mentioned. And due to that, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of changes, new business requirements, and a lot of opportunity to make new tools to improve the workflow and to establish best practices. There's a lot of analysts in the company using SQL, and there's a number of opportunities to improve that workflow with SQL. So there's a lot of everyday problems we probably all come across, like remembering how a query was written, copying and pasting queries from various files, all this stuff which slows us down and can be frustrating at times. So I've been working on a GUI tool for that purpose, to kind of facilitate analysis using a web-based database agnostic tool, as we're moving to integrating with more databases. Before we were relying quite heavily on Teradata. Now we're considering a number of other databases as well. So having a database agnostic, one central database agnostic tool simplifies our environment and can benefit a number of people. So that's something I'm working on there in order to drive SQL adoption as well for across the business, since it's becoming a more data-driven business. So here's a quick screenshot of it. Back to the topic. So if you're not familiar with the TV series Silicon Valley, you may not quite understand this picture. But yeah, so essentially we're looking at some kind of function that can map from academia to data scientists in industry. So who thinks they can draw this guy, Alec Bachman, and in detail? No one? Well, let me give you some clues, some places to start. So we can consider, if we break it down, we can draw a single pixel, and then everyone can draw a single pixel made up of one color, and then when we put all those pixels together, we finally end up with the detailed picture of our friend Alec. So this is kind of visualizing this process of the problem definition, and which is something which is hasn't changed much between academia and industry, or because academia is obviously you're looking at a very specific topic and very measurable outcome, but perhaps industry is you have to stay a bit more relevant. You don't have quite so much scope perhaps, and also everything's much more time critical as opposed to academia, I found. Yeah, so I was going to talk about a box and keeping it simple. Then when I thought about a box, I thought about this. Thought I'd tell you this little story about when about 10, 15 years ago, I was programming this. I was into basically my parents sent me away to France to try and improve French. And I ended up with this, like a pen pal kind of thing. I ended up with this guy who had loads of BB guns and loads of friends with BB guns, and I ended up just getting shot a lot with plastic pellets. So when I got home, I wanted to improve my airsoft skills in order for next time when I go back to France. And since I was very passionate about programming, I combined that with my programming skills and created this massively multiplayer online game called Airsoft Warzone, which was using some Python to bring it back to the topic a little bit. So that ended up with 100,000 monthly active users, and that was all before Facebook actually existed, which was quite a big thing in those days. So it kind of just went viral from my friends sending a few emails around, so we used to play it in school instead of doing any work. Yeah, and then the downside of putting all this effort in is then there's cheaters in games, like always, and then when you ban them, they want to retaliate. So they ended up trying to establish DDoS attacks on my server, which my parents fortunately bought me and we had at home. And then all these guys were taking it down who I banned from the game. And then I was calling my parents during like lunchtime at school, oh, please can you like restart the router? So we have a DOS attack. Yeah, so back to the topic again, keeping it simple with a box. As it's something is easier to sell across the business to stakeholders, which is something that we have to consider a lot more in industry. rather than academia, where the stakeholders are much more on the same technical wavelength, perhaps. So it's less selling involved, especially as the supervisor normally assigns the project to the student. So yeah, in industry, everything's a lot more customer-centric, obviously. And yeah, it's we've kind of gone from models in academia to supermodels in more ways than one. So in academia, we're looking at perhaps a model in more purely the modeling side of it, whereas here we're looking at in industry like more the productionization side of things as well, and also obviously the monitoring and all those other processes that a data scientist needs to meet with the stakeholders about and communicate those kind of concepts and ideas. The other considerations that we have is obviously like dirty data. In academia, the data I was dealing with was a lot cleaner. Here is a lot dirtier, a lot more cleaning has to be done before we can actually move on and process and model the data. Data here can be less structured in industry. And there's obviously, there's more missing data. In academia, I was fortunate in that I had the time to go off and collect my own data sets, so I could ensure there's no missing data and everything's filled out. Whereas here, obviously, a lot of the information comes from the customer, so there can be a lot of missing data which we have to deal with, impute, and so forth. And also across the business in industry, I found there's a lot more technologies being used. So in academia, I could focus more purely on one or two technologies, become really good at that. Whereas here in industry, especially in a legacy business, it's great to have at least an understanding in a lot of the technologies which are being used across the business in IT to productionize and all these kind of things. So that you can relate your models to that. So yeah, I found in academia I could focus much more on the modeling and experimentation and less on the cleaning, for example, and perhaps a bit less on the communication because there wasn't so much selling involved. So the next thing I wanted to say is that talk about is freedom. Academia, I found, offers a lot more freedom of the topics which you wish to, in the topics that you wish to pursue, and also the freedom to learn and develop any skills that you wish, because obviously you're in a university environment, so you can just go off, kind of have quite a lot of freedom to go off and study a lot of things and go on a lot of courses and attend various seminars. But you do have a supervisor, of course, who does impose some constraints. But in general, I find you have a lot more freedom than anywhere else. Expertise. A PhD is probably the only opportunity in life to really explore a topic in real deep detail and become a recognized leading expert in the world at that thing. To really drill deep at that one topic and so forth. So you're exploring the cutting edge without the burden of all these lesser distractions and constraints that you may have in industry, especially in a lot of larger companies. Ownership is another thing I thought was quite a big difference. So in academia, the research you produce will be yours. So you go off and research a topic, and then you have your name on the paper as the first author or wherever. So your accomplishments have your name attached to them, and it's published and all available for everyone to see in a fairly transparent fashion. In a larger company, it's much more common to blend in a bit more like a cog in the wheel, especially in a big, large company. So collaboration. In industry, obviously there's stakeholder management. You often have, especially in a large company, you often have many stakeholders. You have to manage manage expectations across the stakeholders, and many stakeholders and people in the business will have the same intention, obviously, of making the company better and improving revenue and all those KPIs and so forth. But obviously everyone doesn't necessarily want to achieve them in the same kind of way. So as opposed to academia, there's a lot more communication skills and kind of like selling skills involved, I'd say. Projects. In academia, we tend to focus on just one project at a time, whereas in industry, often have many projects on the go at once. So there's a lot more multitasking, working on several projects, picking up a project which someone else has been working on. So this is one which we've probably all been through. You take over a project and then you have to kind of go through all this code which has no comments or poor comments and try to work out what's going on there in order to take over that piece of work. Data collection and understanding. So if you have the time in academia to go out and collect the data set yourself, then obviously you tend to should have a pretty good understanding of the data set. Whereas in industry it can be can have outdated data dictionaries or incomplete, and you have to work a lot communicating with your colleagues and also putting effort in yourself to try and understand the data that you're dealing with. So dependencies and blockers. This is something which is probably a bit less of in academia, because you tend to be working more by yourself in a more isolated environment, in a more theoretical environment as well. Whereas in industry, we have to work with many teams and departments, and especially like during a digital transformation, like at the moment here, IT is in very high demand. So there's a lot of prioritization that we need to do, and focus a lot on understanding the workload which everyone has and taking all that into the equation. Office. So in academia I was in quite a cluttered office with books everywhere. Now I've moved into this big open plan minimal office, so that's a big visual change from academia to industry. Hackathons, that's one thing that hasn't changed. So it's quite common to be involved in hackathons in academia, and Shop Direct is also taking part in many hackathons, such as one I was involved in recently, where we developed an augmented reality fitting room specific for this prototype to sunglasses. So it involved libraries like OpenCV, which some of you computer visionists may be familiar with, for face tracking, like Viola Jones and that kind of thing. And now I'll move on to the second part of the talk, which is on a little tutorial around RStudio. So hands up if you use R. Okay, that's good. And Python? Cool. So all the Python guys, you can use this tool as well, but you'll have to use it via Bash. So it's I think Pythonistas are generally quite familiar with Bash. So yeah, so RStudio recently integrated a new feature into their product, which enables you to create your own personal website within RStudio itself. So if you have one of the latest versions of RStudio, then you'll have this feature within the software. So one of my personal projects in my free time is I contribute to open source, and one of the projects which I created is called Academic. So it's a framework for creating your own personal website, where you can list your publications, talks, projects, all these kinds of things from a very simple way within RStudio. So it's all very integrated, and also from Bash as well. So you can choose from many different themes, and it has a number of different features, so as its number of plugins available. And one of the main things is you can write your website in Markdown. So in Python, you can use pure Markdown to write your website. if you're using RStudio, you can use the R Markdown flavor of Markdown to write your website. So it's nice and simple to format, and you can also integrate LaTeX for math equations. So this kind of stack uses RStudio or Bash from Python point of view, and then my open source project called Academic, and then you can upload your project to GitHub, and then Netlify is a hosting service which is free for personal use, and that will automatically detect any changes pushed to GitHub and then automatically update your website. So it can be as easy as just doing a git commit on a Markdown file, then your website is automatically updated. So it's quite handy if you're already using tools like R Markdown or Python on a daily basis, and you'd like a website to show off all your awesome skills and projects and so forth. So it's all very integrated. So it uses another open source project underneath called Hugo, which is a static site generator, and Academic is a framework built up around that for generating personal websites. So unlike other alternatives like Jekyll or WordPress, which you may have heard about, they have complex Ruby and PHP dependencies respectively, whereas Hugo, one of the unique things about it is it's just a binary file, so you don't have any dependencies at all, so it's easy to update. You don't have all these issues with hackers as well, because it's not dynamic at all, it just generates a static HTML website. So it's nice and secure. So here's some links if you're interested. There's a blog here about actually using RStudio to create your website. So I just give you a little tutorial on now. So within RStudio, you first will need to install Blogdown by install.packages Blogdown, and then install Hugo, the static site generator, using Blogdown install Hugo. And then within the RStudio interface, we can then create a new project and then select the bottom option, which is a new option in this version of RStudio, called website using Blogdown. And then create our website, test. And then for the theme, put in Cushen / Hugo Academic. And then we have our new project created. And then we can do so just to check that. Yeah, so I've been collaborating with some of the RStudio guys who develop RStudio itself in order to integrate everything very closely. A number of things changed recently. So yeah, in order to serve the site locally to test it, we type this command. So just need to yep. So then we have our website created. So this is just a template website created within pretty much 10 minutes, all from Markdown. So all of these, so you can have various content such as publications, talks, posts, blog posts, and projects. And all of this is written in Markdown or R Markdown, then it's converted to HTML automatically. So you can write your whole website in Markdown, push it to GitHub, and then Netlify can watch for any changes and automatically publish any changes as soon as you push to GitHub. So it's quite a great tool if you're already using Markdown and RStudio or Python on a daily basis, already very familiar with them. It's a nice and easy way to create your own personal website. And that's it. Thank you very much.